My husband demanded on our wedding day that I transfer my house to his parents. This entitled family tried to ruin my life. Let's dive right into the story. So I, 27 female, and my now ex-boyfriend, 29 male, were planning on getting married this spring until disaster struck. However, before jumping straight into that, let me give you some context. As you have read, I'm in my late 20s, soon to be 30s, and a couple years ago I found myself spending night after night scrolling on all types of dating apps just waiting to find the perfect guy. I've spent a plethora of hours swiping on Hinge, Tinder, Bumble, etc., you name it, I've probably been on it. However, none of them seem to work like people are always preaching. I constantly see TikTok videos saying, "Oh, we met on Tinder or Hinge and ever since then we hit it off and it's been great." Or loyalty tests the YouTuber do to see if the guy or girl is on Tinder. They are not in most cases. I did not know what to think. I didn't know if it was just me or if it was just the guys. Every single person I found that looked perfect always had one deal breaker I found out about shortly into the relationship. Until one day when I matched with a guy that was seemingly perfect. His personality was great, he looked great, he had a good job, he had a family, he was tall, everything looked perfect on paper, but little did I know what I was about to get myself into. After chatting for a while on Tinder and learning a little about each other, we decided to go out on a date to this new fancy restaurant that just opened up in town. We agreed on a time and date, and now all that was left was to wait. I don't know how to explain this, but I felt giddy with joy. Finally, after searching far and wide, I found someone that I truly liked and someone that liked me back. As planned, he came around 7 p.m. to pick me up from my house to drive us to the restaurant. We arrived at the restaurant around 7:30 and were quickly seated at our table as we had made a reservation prior to arriving. Everything was going smoothly, we talked as we ordered, we talked some more, and before we knew it, it was already 9:30. As we asked for the check, he asked me, "Do you want to pay it in full here? I can give you the money later. I don't have any money with me right now." It took me a moment to process before realizing that he was asking me to pay it in full, which was around $300, not including tip, as we had bought some champagne and wine too. And by the way, Ripe Stars, I'm curious, if you go on a date, do you expect either person to just pay it in full, or would you split the bill? Let me know in the comments how you handle this. Now for me, it's not a matter of money, as not to brag, but I think I'm pretty well off. I own my own house, I work a good job that pays well, and I can provide for myself and even splurge a little when it comes to buying things. The issue I had was that he never even mentioned about him paying for it. Even more so when he is also quite well off, as he picked me up in some kind of Mercedes that was fully geared out. He had full leather seats with a touchpad screen and other things I cannot quite remember. But I quickly got past this and I didn't mind this so much and didn't want this of all things to break up the relationship, so reluctantly I agreed and he drove me home. Back home, I kept thinking about the restaurant incident and whether or not I should have said something. However, at the time I did not really care much and I was just happy I went out on a real date with seemingly no hiccups other than the one incident. And by the way, Ripe Stars, I gotta say, I would love to be as rich as these people to not care about a $300 dinner. That is just outrageous. Anyway, as time went on, we went on more and more dates, talking more and more to each other until it felt like we were the ones for each other. I know this sounds like your typical story, but just bear with me, I will get real interesting soon. After getting to know each other well enough, we decided it was time to let our parents know so that we could meet each other's parents. I was perfectly fine with this, however, he was a little bit iffy until I convinced him to let it go. First I introduced him to my parents and they adored him. We went to dinner with them and they would not stop talking to him about what he was doing, how his life was, etc. And afterwards they kept telling me how we were such a good fit and we were perfect with each other. This wiped away any lingering doubts I had and I thought about asking to marry him right then and there, but I didn't want to get ahead of myself. The week after we went to go visit his parents, and while it wasn't the worst interaction, it wasn't also the best. We sat down and started talking, and whenever they asked a question about me or something that has to do with me, they would always say it while looking at my ex-boyfriend, expecting that he would have an answer. Whenever I would answer, they would always look a bit irritated at me, like I should have just stayed quiet and let the adults talk. Anyway, throughout the entire time, I always got a feeling that they did not like me or had something against me, and they would always drop snarky comments about my job or the way I handled things or even how I dressed. politely but passive-aggressively, they kept dropping hints and even comments that they wanted me to be more like a traditional girl who listened to her boyfriend, took care of him, and did all of the housework and would talk when spoken to. This angered me, as all my life I had been striving to be independent and not relying on others, and I had struggled most of my life, but now, just as I finally found a sense of stability, I was told to just give up and be an obedient housewife. I would not stand for this, but at the time, not wanting to upset my boyfriend or his parents, I just kept quiet and I ignored their comments. Later on the car ride back to my house, I mentioned what his parents had said and he just brushed it off, reassuring me that everything would be fine. I felt that something was wrong, but I too brushed it off, reassuring myself that everything was gonna be fine and that I would love my boyfriend no matter what comes to happen. Well, a couple months later, around a year or two after we had started talking, we were now engaged. He had proposed just last week when we were on vacation for Christmas. I immediately said yes, I truly loved him and I thought he loved me. I finally felt at ease knowing that he loved me as much as I loved him. We soon announced that we were engaged to our friends and families and that in the near future we'd be hosting a wedding and they were all invited. We ended up getting some mixed reactions, but all in all, they were very positive, congratulating us on our engagement. Later that night, I got a phone call from his parents asking where the venue was gonna be and if we were gonna do a church wedding or some other type of wedding. I expected this, but I didn't expect them to ask so soon, so I just said, me and your son are gonna start figuring it out soon, and you guys will be the first people to know. They seemed a little bit disappointed, but understood and hung up. I thought everything went well, so I turned off my phone and went to sleep. That morning, my ex-boyfriend and I were chatting about when and where to plan the wedding, and we ended up agreeing to do it in the coming months in the springtime. We decided to book a banquet hall for our wedding venue and started arranging and planning everything out. Once we knew that we were going to do this, I called his parents and told them about our plans, and let's just say they were not too happy. They started telling me that they wanted to do this and ended up with an entire new plan. When I asked my ex-boyfriend thought about it, they just said that he was completely on board with it. I seemed a bit skeptical, but I said I would check in with him and I would get back to them. I know it might seem a bit paranoid, but I felt like they were trying to control our wedding. I know they should get somewhat of a say in what we do, but they were asking us to completely revamp everything. When I asked my now ex-boyfriend about this, he just said that they would keep pushing for this until we either agreed or compromised with them, so well, he just reluctantly agreed. I did not know if it was marriage stress or something else, but I was really worried about what was going on, so I went to my parents. They said that they did not care and that I did and that it was my wedding, and if I wanted to, I could just change it. Reluctantly, I ended up agreeing with them and decided to change and redo the entire thing. Eventually, we sorted everything out and sent out the invitations, and now all that was left to do was wait. It was now the day of the wedding and I was getting ready for the ceremony as it was just hours away when my boyfriend came into the room. I was a little shocked, as usually you're not supposed to see the bride before the ceremony, but it did not really matter to me, so I asked if there was something that he needed. This is when he presented me with a document he had been holding in his hand the entire time. I carefully read it over and was shocked at what I had just read. I was so shocked I could barely talk, but I just asked, "Are you serious?" He said, "Yes, I am, and this is happening, or we are calling off the wedding." Well, to give some context, the document said that in order to show my commitment to the relationship, I had to transfer ownership of my house that I owned to his parents as a gift by signing the document. When I confronted him and asked what it was all about, he said that it was just a formality and that it was a tradition and that they would not kick us out of the house. I quickly glanced around the room to see if anyone was around when I saw his parents in the corner of the room staring and beaming proudly at their son. There was no one else in the room, so I yelled angrily, asking them if this was their idea and if they were being serious about this. They simply nodded like they were not even fazed by my yelling. This led me to believe that this was not their first time trying to pull this kind of trick on someone. I started confronting my ex-boyfriend about the situation, saying stuff like, "The audacity you have to do this right before the wedding. This is my home we are talking about that I worked hard to get and pay off. Why would I just give it to you? I don't think I'm comfortable giving it up, as I've put in time and effort to save up and buy this all by myself. Yet you're just expecting me to hand it over like it's nothing." He started to get defensive, saying that I don't trust him of all people and that by doing this I'm making fun of their family tradition. He kept saying how I had no respect for him or his family and that I should be ashamed for how I was reacting. His parents then chimed in saying that I was being selfish and I was not prioritizing the family. They said that if I truly loved him then I would sign the contract without hesitation. However, I refused to sign and I said plain and simple, I will not sign and give up everything I've worked for and everything I've done just to get married. Then the family showed their true colors. My boyfriend started becoming aggressive, threatening to hit and slap me if I did not sign the contract. His parents then started calling me a gold digger and how I was just trying to use their son for his money. And if I did not sign the contract, then they would cut off ties between my ex-boyfriend and I and would spread the rumor of me being a gold digger trying to use their son for his non-existent wealth. Realizing how bad this could turn out, I ripped up the contract right then and there and said, F all of you, the wedding is off. They just stood there in shock while I made my way to the ceremony and walked up to the stand. I picked up the microphone that was conveniently placed there and announced to all the guests that the wedding was off and I was sorry for wasting their time, but they were good to go home. They just started to ask a bunch of questions, but I simply just said, I realized that my boyfriend and his family were trying to use me for my house and just now they tried to make me sign a contract giving it all up. I'm not marrying someone with the audacity to do that an hour before the wedding. They all gasped in shock and I simply just walked away, wiping the tears away as I made my way to the car. However, there's a happy ending to this story. I ended up finding a new boyfriend shortly after this incident and currently we are engaged and are planning to get married in 2026. And the next one is titled, You have decided to fire me because I was in the hospital? Well, miss your wedding dinner tasting then. And by the way, if you have enjoyed this story so far, please don't forget to like the video and post some star emojis in the comments if you want to show your support. Thank you so much. This happened when I just graduated university. I had my main job over the weekend which paid the living and a side job at a large mobile phone / broadband selling company, basically retail but with phones. The shop was located inside a larger retail store as an island in the middle and of course a lot of people did not know about it and did not exactly visit our store to buy a contract or upgrade. Instead they would go to the store on the high street, which was a lot nicer and bigger compared to our island. A few important details about the store: the working times usually are 9 till 20 o'clock on the weekdays and tills have to be shut at 8 p.m, otherwise it causes issues with accounting. Staff members, unless they are warehouse, cannot stay past 8:10, 8:15 due to insurance reasons and only the managers can lock the store up. Warehouse can stay later and they have their own exit, however it cannot be used by those who are not working in the warehouse. When you start / finish you have to put the times in a special machine which compares them to your rota. Same when you go for lunch. If you finish earlier than you are scheduled, then the machine will automatically put it as unauthorized absence. The other option is putting it as sick. You cannot take holiday on the day and the times of the rota cannot be changed on the day either, so you cannot put someone as starting at 9 and change the same day as to starting at 10, as it would not allow you to. If you forgot to clock out, the extra time will be counted as overtime and only the manager can amend it, but they cannot make it that you worked less than what is on the rota. However, it's also a lot easier to amend the times on the same day, as if you're trying to do it the next day you will need the details of the staff to do it, like their memorable word and so on. Also, in our island store you must have at least 2 employers working during the same hours as per company policy, and it was my last day at said store. Well, my manager decided to let go of me because I did not attend a shift due to being in the hospital and I was still on my probation. I was told that I still have to work the notice period, which was 2 weeks. My manager, I call him Dan, had to create rotas 2 weeks in advance as per company policy. He can change the rotas up to a last Friday of the week, meaning he can change the next week's rota on the Friday before, but not after. So then Dan scheduled me on my last day on a 17 to 21 o'clock shift when my usual shifts are 16 to 20 o'clock. I've asked him if this was correct both personally and in the team group chat and he confirmed it. Dan was also the type of those whiny managers who don't do anything but complain about everything and don't bother to train you or show you the ropes, so I kind of knew he made a mistake but decided not to mention it. Cue the malicious compliance. Friday rolls on, I'm hungry, so I decided to have a late lunch before my shift starts. I'm putting the order through and notice that Dan is trying to call me. I decline. I finish my order to feel that Dan is trying to call me again. Alongside a few texts received from him, I decide to reply. Dan, hey, where were you? You're not at the store and it's already past 4 and we have one of the higher-ups checking how things are going. Me, oh, I'm having lunch. I'm not scheduled until 5 p.m, remember? Dan, well no, you're lying. Your shifts are always 4 till 8. Make sure of it. Get here. I cannot stay as I have to try the food that will be served at my wedding and compose the menu. Me, oh sorry, but I really can't. I've just ordered lunch and waiting for it to be ready, and then I have to eat. I've asked you if the rota is correct and you said it is. But in case if you don't believe me, I will send you a screenshot and we'll see you at 5. I did send him a screenshot where I've questioned my times and he confirmed that they are correct. I have not heard from him until I got back to the store. At the store, I see Dan talking to the higher-up person. Dan notices me first, waves me over as soon as I sign in, and says that he really needs to be somewhere else. He just needs to get to his office and get his code. I nod and have a small talk with the higher-up. Higher-up, oh, it was so nice of Dan to cover the start of your shift as you were having a family emergency. He is such a good and caring manager, right? Me, family emergency? Not sure what you're on about, but my shift has just started as per the rota. The higher-up is confused. He asks to see the rota. I gladly show him the pictures Dan had posted on the group chat. Then higher-ups turn to me and another member of staff and ask us if one of us is a team leader and if not, when did we start? After finding out we are not team leaders and have started less than 12 weeks ago, the higher-up gets visibly angry. He stops Dan as he was on his way to leave and tells him that he cannot leave the premises as it is against the company's policy to leave employers who haven't been with the company for 12 weeks unattended or to close up, so he must stay, otherwise the company insurance is not valid and there will be a hefty fine. Dan has no option but to stay, meaning he was missing the food tasting. He wanted to call his fiancée, however the high-up has reminded him no phones during the shift and while on the store floor, so Dan could not even let his fiancée know who was texting him non-stop. While higher-up was there and while Dan was forced to do his job, I had a few more conversations with him and brought up all the things Dan failed to provide us training on, alongside with lack of support and any progression meetings, so by 8 o'clock higher-up was pissed with Dan and was organizing a meeting with him and extra training for him, which I don't think was paid as Dan had to do it outside work hours. He was also put on a close monitor for at least a month. As everyone was leaving at 8 p.m, I was slowly getting ready and Dan had tried to hurry me up, but I was mainly ignoring him. Dan, the store needs to be closed before 8:10, hurry up. Me, oh, but you scheduled me until 9 p.m. today. I cannot leave before that as the system will not allow me to clock out. Dan, well, you must leave as insurance does not cover us against theft or damage. If there's someone else in the store after 8 p.m, we have to put the alarms on too. Me, sorry, but I really don't want to miss on any money. You have scheduled me until 9, so I will work until 9. Dan, what are you doing? You need to leave. Me, I can clean the display models and the island does look like it needs to be vacuumed. The higher-up was having the best time in the world. He was still there enjoying the show since he saw that Dan put me until 9 p.m. At some point he gets tired of our back and forth and told Dan to cover me until 9 p.m. and stay in the store and then change the hours in the system that I finished at 9 p.m. and I can go home. Dan had tried to argue, but the higher-up pointed out that it was his mistake and if something happens in the store he will be the one responsible as he should have checked the rotas beforehand. Dan has no choice but to follow the orders. From what I heard, he left around 10 p.m. that day as the system would not allow him to log in. His fiancée also left him a few years later, I don't know the reason. But she took the house and the dog and saved money since she never married him. I've heard that Dan works as a personal growth coach now, but not very successful at it either. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. About a year and a half ago, I was putting up Christmas decorations like I always do with my family, only this year we were trying to instill into our kids the more religious aspects of the holidays. That while gifts are nice, it can also be good to think about the more religious and spiritual side of things. That came out in our decoration too, when we put a cross out on our lawn right next to a manger display. We figured that it would be fine, but it did not take long before we started to have problems with our HOA. They sent us a letter telling us that some of our Christmas decorations were not board approved and needed to be removed or we would get a fine. They of course did not tell us what they wanted removed, thinking that we could just read their minds or something. I called to see what the issue was, and I was shocked to find out that it was the cross. They claimed that it was inappropriate and not a Christmas decoration. The manger was fine, no problem displaying the baby Jesus. The cross though, that symbolized the entire religion, that was no good and clearly had to be removed. Now this is not important, but I just find it hilarious. I asked them if it wasn't appropriate decorations for Christmas to then tell me what holiday it was good for. They told me that the only holiday I could put a cross up outside was for Passover. Now, I admit I don't know much about Jewish holidays except for TV specials, but the idea of them putting out big old crosses for it makes me laugh every single time. If you think that I was gonna take it down because the HOA was telling me to, then you would be wrong. I looked in their bylaws and there was no master list of what was and was not a Christmas decoration. They simply wanted the cross taken down for some reason and would say anything they wanted to make it happen. I called their bluff, and when they started to send me fines in the mail, I simply ignored them. They added up to about $4,000 in total, and then 2 days before Christmas they did something worse than the Grinch himself ever could. My HOA years and years back got permission to force homeowners into enrolling in kind of an auto-pay system. Some of you might pay bills that way or streaming subscriptions. They just take it out the fee every month from the bank account you registered with. What I didn't know they could do was go into the system and simply take out $4,000 from my bank account. I saw the money gone and where it went on my bank statement and was furious. The worst part was I could not do anything at the time since it was now Christmas Eve. I could not get anybody on the phone from the bank, the HOA, a lawyer, just nothing. They just drained most of my bank account and I had bills to pay at the start of the month I now could not afford. Talk about a lousy Christmas surprise. It was not until after the new year that I was able to get a lawyer and the paperwork rolling in order to sue the HOA for both giving me all those fines in the first place and then just taking out the money without any type of permission. That was theft in my book, and the lawyer agreed with me. They misused the system and stole. There was good news and bad news though when it came to filing a lawsuit against them. They showed me some fine print crap showing that they were able to take out any unpaid dues or fines before the new year, even if that meant not giving me any time or warning. It was a piece of the autopay system that nobody knew about. As messed up as it was, there was no criminal activity to what they did. The good news was I had every right to take them to civil court because they had no reason to fine me all of that money in the first place. I wanted every single penny back, plus reparations for not having it for 3 months at this point, plus I was being extra petty and wanted a written apology from them. They were dumb enough to try and fight this and weasel their way out of needing to give me any of my own money back. I really think they wanted to just drag it out for as long as possible because they are just those horrible type of people. They were going to argue in court that my decoration was against HOA laws and the fines should stick. Instead of pulling out a list of approved decorations that their original messages led me to believe existed, they did something else. They went into a different section and started to argue that me putting a cross out was going against a bylaw that stated, "No resident shall push a religious agenda or faith on another resident." This rule was really to stop people going door to door trying to get people to join their religion. She was claiming that was what my cross was doing, which is not true at all. I was not telling people to convert or that it was the only religion allowed. I argued that it is a Christmas decoration, especially placed next to the manger, showing the beginning and end of the man the entire holiday is based on. If they wanted to ban my cross, shouldn't they also ban the manger? And at that point, anything related to Santa as well? And when I say I argued this, I really mean my lawyer, because I admit I'm not smart enough to come up with that kind of comeback argument off the top of my head. I would have stood there confused for a good 20 minutes saying, After hearing both sides, the court agreed there was no basis for the fines and they had to return the money to me. Not only that though, but also pay my court fees, their own lawyer and other reparations to me. Sadly, a judge cannot really force somebody to apologize. I never really expected that to be able to happen. It was more of a pipe dream kind of thing. I did one more thing though that hurt the HOA in the long run. I spread the news of what the HOA can do with the autopay system via word of mouth, the internet and even a newsletter. I wanted people to know that the HOA had abilities to simply take money from their bank account seemingly at any time. urging people to opt out and telling them that legally they were allowed to switch to getting mailed bills every month instead. It might sound like a small thing, but the impact was huge. People that once were fine with the HOA were suddenly pissed off and felt like they were a greedy corporation going behind people's backs. I also heard that they ended up losing out on more money because now people were fighting fines and the HOA could not do anything except spend more money trying to sue people. It ended with more money in the pockets of the people and less going to the HOA people who were just trying to scam and take advantage of us. As for my cross, it's already up for this year and I've not heard a peep from the HOA about it again. Or anybody else thinking that it was a problem to even exist. The HOAs need to stay out of people's personal lives and only focus on their actual role. And yeah guys, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. And also check out my podcast by searching for Ripe Stories on Spotify, Amazon, Audible and other podcast platforms. You will often find exclusive episodes and early access to new content. Furthermore, please check out my Patreon by going to patreon.com/ripeyoutube or my YouTube membership program for even more exclusive stories. Thank you so much and I will see you again tomorrow.